Robert Snow was once the captain of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department and was in charge of the Department of Homicide and Robbery and the Department of Organised Crime, and has written numerous books on police work. One day Robert underwent hypnotic regression as a dare to prove that reincarnation was not true, but what he discovered surprised and unsettled him. It began when he was at a party and a police psychologist told him that she did past life regressions as a hobby. She said that her client was initially made to relax in order for past life memories to come through. Captain Snow suggested to the psychologist that the memories were probably fabricated, but in order to prove him wrong, she offered to regress him. Snow initially agreed to take part, but the psychologist had a hard time trying to get Snow to take part in a session, and even suggested he was scared. Although reluctant, he agreed to be regressed, but went to a different therapist. The whole time not believing in reincarnation and did not expect anything to happen during the session. The regression therapist was a woman called Dr. Mary Ellen Griffith, and she started this session by asking him to picture his higher self coming to greet him and what he was wearing. Snow said, "How the hell would I know?" But he decided to give it a try. He said, "A long white gown. Isn't that what all spirits wore?" She said, "Your higher self is standing there and asking if you're ready to go on a journey. It is telling you that it will guide you and protect you on your journey." Snow thought, "I can't believe I'm doing this." But during the regression, Snow started to experience clear past life memories, and the past life events were more clear than waking consciousness. He was able to recall many different lifetimes, but the one that stood out was that of a portrait painter looked to be from the 19th century, and Snow remembered numerous specific details about that particular lifetime as an artist, where he is painting a portrait of a hunchback woman, and remembered the experience. He remembered the paint strokes that were used to create the painting, and why someone with a pronounced deformity would want that portrait painted. More aspects of the regression came through other than the portrait of the hunchback woman. He found that he painted portraits to make money, but hated painting portraits. He used the name Jack and had a walking stick. He and his wife spent some time in France, and his wife was unable to bear any children. He obviously did not make much money from painting, as they were always desperate for money, and they would argue about it, though they had a happy marriage. He worked in a studio that had a skylight and a row of windows, but had once stayed on an estate with large gardens. His wife had died from a blood clot, and he himself had died in autumn 1917 of a heart attack in the large city surrounded by tall buildings. After the session, Snow was less skeptical about reincarnation, which had obviously had a major effect on him, and he went in search of further proof to see whether his experience was authentic. However, there was still some doubt, and figured he must have previously learned about the portrait painter from a book, either at school or in a museum, and the regression was the result of a forgotten memory. Nevertheless, Snow went in search of evidence, as if he was dealing with a police case, where he methodically examined art books, visited various art galleries, and met with art dealers. He specifically went in search of the portrait of the hunchback woman that he'd seen whilst under regression. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to find an historical artist that fitted the artist in his regression. Even though Snow had had a lot of experience as a researcher, having written 6 books on police management, after a year of trying to find the portrait of the hunchback woman, he came to a dead end and came to the conclusion that he would not be able to identify the artist that he'd seen whilst being regressed. It was a short time after his failed research that his wife Melanie suggested they have a holiday in New Orleans to celebrate their wedding anniversary, and it was on the last day of their vacation when Snow wandered into an art gallery in the French Quarter of New Orleans. It was in this gallery that Snow would undergo another profound episode. Hanging on the wall of the gallery was the portrait of the hunchbacked woman that he'd seen in his regression, where Snow proceeded to whirl around and then stared open-mouthed at the portrait in front of him. He was frozen in his tracks and it felt like a huge voltage surging through his body. Had he somehow been guided to the gallery by some spiritual source rather than by mere chance? For several minutes, Snow just stood gazing at the portrait and then closed his eyes and pictured the scene where he is painting this very painting in his studio, and then opening his eyes to see the actual finished portrait. Everything appeared surreal, and he felt he was in a vivid dream where he was waking up covered in sweat. He kept telling himself it is all a dream and it's not real, but at the same time was absolutely certain that it was the same painting he had seen while under hypnosis. Yet stumbling onto it by accident like this was simply too weird to be true, because things like this just didn't happen in real life. After all the months of thorough searching, would he perchance come upon the painting like this? How could it be that his wife Melanie would just happen to want to go to New Orleans, and that they would just happen to visit this gallery just when they happened to have this painting for sale? During his years as a police officer, he had always searched for the truth, which on many occasions didn't turn out to be what he'd expected. But here he was, having to face the truth that he'd been looking for, while at the same time trying to find any way to deny what he'd found, believing that paranormal things didn't happen to real people. After making inquiries, he found that the portrait was painted by a man called J. Carroll Beckwith. Still not believing what was happening to him, he figured he had once seen the portrait of the hunchback woman at a museum or in an exhibition. To seek further clarification, he asked the gallery worker if this was possible, but was told no, you would not have seen this work because it had been in private hands for many years, and there had not been an exhibition of Beckwith's work in the last 75 years, and he wasn't that famous. So did Captain Snow really find the portrait by chance, or did a spiritual message somehow get sent to his wife Melanie to go to New Orleans? After further research, Snow found that Beckwith's last exhibition was in 1911, long before Snow was born. Although reluctant to accept reincarnation as the basis of his regression experience, he had to accept the fact that there had been a J. Carroll Beckwith, that if this were a police case, the evidence he compiled would stand up in court. Snow said that as a police officer, he has been shot at and people have also tried to stab him, but nothing compares to how unnerved he felt when he discovered he had lived a past life or lives. Captain Snow has written a book called Looking for Carroll Beckwith, Portrait of a Past Life Detective, which documents his reincarnation case in detail.